We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Friday edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, and we have an amazing show lined up for you today. We have two powerhouse women that have really touched our lives in uniquely different ways. Our first guest today is the lovely and uber-talented Sussan Deyhim from Iran, and in hour number 2, we're going to be the wife of the late Philip K. Dick, and still very much engaged in the legacy and history of one of the greatest science fiction writers of our time, and a bit of a prophet and a seer as well. We'll talk about his life and Tessa's relationship with Philip, both in this life and in perhaps even his afterlife, and also some of Tessa's work as well. She's an interesting woman and has some really fine material up at her website as well. But without further ado, since she's checked in here in the queue, I can see her. I want to bring on a longtime friend, I guess compatriot, fellow artist. I think she's in Los Angeles today. So let's bring her on. This is Sussan Deyhim. Here we go. Hello, Sussan. Hello?
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 Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
Oh, this is Tony. This is, yeah, I was.
Oh, hey, Tony.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. Hey, this is not we're not doing astrology today.
Oh, okay, my bad. All right.
Come back Wednesday, okay?
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thanks, man. All right, well, that was an interesting way to start the interview off. Sussan had kind of a deep voice there, didn't she? Let me see if I can call her. I've been on Facebook. Let's try this. Here we go. Let's go. Let's try this. When in doubt, reach out, as they say, right? And one more. Here we go. All right, let's be proactive.
Hello.
Sussan?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Robert?
Welcome to the show. You're live on the air.
Oh, wonderful.
But you're gonna have to talk up a little bit. You're
okay. Oh, I see. Hi. Is that better?
That's better. Yes.
Okay.
We can hear your lovely voice.
Wonderful.
How are you?
Good. Good. So happy to finally talk to you. It's been a while we're in touch on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked was when I was with you and Richard down in Santa Monica.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, overlooking the ocean.
Are you guys still there?
No, we moved. We are in in Encino Hills, which is near Mulholland. We have joined the Mulholland Drive sanctuary weirdos.
Very
I
interesting.
have to tell you that I actually had serious insomnia for a few days, and finally last night I didn't. And not only I didn't, I woke up like literally 10 minutes ago, which is unbelievable for me. So this is really like Good Morning Universe.
So you've obviously seen Mulholland Drive, right, by Lynch?
Yes, I have.
What do you think of that movie?
Well, I have to really think about it now because it's been a while, but I had a couple of times I drove from a friend's house, which is really on Mulholland, but the other side of town, to my place, which is on the west side, and at night. And all I could think about was the feeling I was left after Mulholland Drive as a movie, and that travel through Mulholland Drive at night, that late, like 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. They had a very similar feeling. It was like very spooky, very mysterious, very interesting. So, it was. I think that's what I remember from that film.
Yeah. Have you or Richard read any of Dave McGowan's stuff on the Laurel Canyon? Have you guys gotten it?
You're breaking. No, I haven't.
Well, Richard might find it interesting. Dave McGowan is a kind of a investigative journalist, and he has kind of charted the history of the Laurel Canyon, starting back with actually Tom Mix, and then going up through the 60s and the explosion of the hippie culture in the 60s and in the TLC, and he looks at who the people were that were living in and around the Laurel Canyon, and he looks into their family backgrounds and histories, and he comes up with some really interesting, puzzling. Some of them are quite troubling, and but it's a fascinating read, and from just a kind of a historical, musical perspective, I think Richard would dig it, and you might find it interesting, but it's a little on the dark. It's a little on the dark side for sure.
Well, so is everything else we all are involved with, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you. A lot of people. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but I'm sure there are people that listen to my show that may not be as familiar with you as I might be, or other people who are, tuned into world music, sacred music, and vocal music. And I wanted you to sort of, where you came from. You were originally kind of a child star in Iran, and you grew up during a pretty prosperous time under the Shah, and then everything changes dramatically. Of course, you're out of the country for that when that occurs. But I wonder if you could just kind of give people a brief, kind of dance about, who you are. And I know it's tough, but let's see if we can pull this off.
Well, I grew up in Tehran. I was a ballet dancer and a sort of science student, so I had to choose between the arts and sciences, and it just went to the arts. And then I was part of there was one of the most interesting avant-garde festivals of the 70s was in Shiraz, in the Persepolis, in the city of Shiraz. And that's where I met people like Robert Wilson and John Cage and Stockhausen and Maurice Béjart and the Living Theater. And at that point I was quite young, and I was we worked for the Persian National Television as dancers, so they sent us there to see and learn all the amazing works coming from Europe and the U.S. And there I met Maurice Béjart, and I was a ballet dancer, so I talked to him, and he said, you should come to my school in Brussels. And then I went there and auditioned. I got in, and that was 1976. And since then, I've had a career and kind of love affair with quite a few different art forms, from dance to theater to uh, choreography, multimedia, electronic music, visual arts, film, and actually now my latest piece of work that I'm creating right now is a pretty evolved multimedia piece that is actually including everything that I've been doing in the art forms. So it's a big multimedia piece that's coming on stage on January 19th at Freud Hall, and it's previewed and in residency, right now in residency at Center for the Art of Performance, which is called CAP UCLA at Freud Hall. So it's kind of brings all the different sensibilities together in this one project, which I will tell you about a little bit more when we talk about the project.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of summarizing all of that. And in this process, I've had the amazing luxury of working and meeting so many different and amazing artists internationally, and live and learn with them. Worked for years with Bobby McFerrin, and I love him, and we've done a lot of collaborative improvisational work with Voicestra, amazing group of singers. Some works in film with Peter Gabriel. There's just so much going on. I think you have to deconstruct it. Maybe it's easier that way.
So you start off as a dancer, a ballet dancer, and you go to Brussels and study with Béjart. I don't think I ever asked you this question before, but when did you really discover your voice and said, this is my instrument, this is where I want to take it all?
Well, when I've always loved music, and my family, they weren't professional musicians, but everybody played an instrument or sang, and so it was always in my life. And in Brussels, the school that I went to was a performing arts school, so we had a lot of different kinds of classes in dance and theater, in music, in a lot of different kinds of theater, and so there I was more involved in taking classes with teachers we had, mostly classical Western music, and a lot of them really wanted me to possibly change career and become an opera singer, and I just got an idea that the possibility was there, but I was not really interested in singing. I was really interested in dancing at that time. But gradually, as I entered the ballet of the 20th century, Maurice Béjart's company, I really could not deal with the carrot-eating, anorexic, non-intellectual, very physical atmosphere of a ballet company. So I had to just, my whole dream about entering this amazing ballet company and tour the world with them, which I did for a little while. It was very depressing. I just was not getting what I was expecting. So I moved out of the company, and that's when I traveled to New York in the middle of hostage crisis, crazy enough, and had 3 months of visa left for a trip that I never took in the summertime with my sister to Jamaica, I think. So with that, I entered the country, and I immediately after realized it was very difficult to go back to Iran, and I got my political asylum in the U.S. And there I started doing, a lot of choreography, and for that I was doing a lot of vocal improvisations, because one of the teachers we had in Brussels was a wonderful yogic and dancer who worked many years for Stockhausen, and he would teach us vocal improvisations. And so there was this idea of using the ritual and the futuristic, sensibility in those classes. And me coming from Iran with so much amazing folklore and music, and also having witnessed the Shiraz festival, where you saw astounding music come from the Kecak of Java, of Indonesia. You had Dagar brothers from India. You had truly an astounding variety of ancient music coming from different parts of the world in juxtaposition with everything that was at that point the ultimate avant-garde, international avant-garde of Alvin Nicolais, John Cage, all those amazing people in one festival was, kind of traced me as, until now I think my work has a lot to do with ancient rituals, and then how do you bridge the gap into the future without the hang-up of traditionalists, without the whole heaviness of the traditionalists wanting to keep the culture hostage to a traditional form, as opposed to the vibrational aspect of ritualistic music, ancient music, and also there's this amazing thing with the human voice, with the same two vocal cords, the size of a quarter. How much music has been produced since the beginning of time with human voice? You could just imagine, from the Pygmies to Eskimo throat singers to Wagner to Mozart to flamenco to pop music to rock to. It's astounding the capacity of human vocal cords, and that itself has became a very, very inspiring science for me to study the indigenous vocal techniques from all over the world and dig into the techniques, because none of them are except for Western classical music and pop music, none of those ancient classical vocal art forms, none of them are it's all oral learning. And to deconstruct it and see how does some person sings that sort of amazing falsetto in Indian classical music, or this amazing vocal technique in of the Pygmies, or so this really became an obsession for me, because I really loved all this music, just melodically I loved the music, but I also was very curious about how you deconstruct these techniques and how you make it happen. And that's been a very, very interesting path for me to explore with my voice, the human voice. And also the cosmology of all this old and ancient music is interesting, because it's not just the notes. You can't deconstruct the music and put the notes in there and people can play it. It's really vibrational. You have to surrender to the music, to the sensuality, to the nuances, to the life between two notes, which may be a quarter note, but it has lived for centuries to travel that quarter note. So there's a lot attached to that journey of the slide between two notes. So all of that is something that you can't deconstruct, and maybe that's why most of that music. I don't think that's why. I think the reason why none of that music has entered the Western classical music, which we call early music, it's like we're talking about 17th century, really. So we're talking about many, many centuries prior to that. The traditions have never entered the Western classical music, hemisphere. And so which is a really humongous pity. I mean, in the early century, you had 20th century of Bela Bartok, or people experimenting, or Mahler with Bavarian folk songs, but we've never really. It's a much more recent thing. Maybe Steve Reich and Philip Glass, maybe they've tried to integrate some of the maybe African influenced music or different parts of the world, but it's really a new phenomenon. And hopefully, now that the world is unveiled through everything that we know of, some of it is great and some of it is not, through the internet, maybe there's a bigger and deeper leakage of all those traditions into the Western tradition of music. So, yes, I went to New York and started doing choreography for my music, and then I integrated some of the improvisational vocal techniques that I had studied with my teacher in Brussels, and then people really responded to it in a most wonderful way. And I became aware that this work that I had done without having anything ambitious attached to it was something now that I could actually embrace more. And then and also I had a lot of disappointments from the world of dance because I love moving and dancing, but I'm really a mental person, so it just and the revolution happened in Iran, the whole trauma and nostalgia for not being able to go back home, and so ballet didn't quite cut through, and I just started doing a lot of music and theater, and worked with La Mama Repertoire Company.
Right.
And I worked as Medea. I performed as in Tibetan Book of the Dead with an amazing production at La Mama. I got involved more in theater and music and multimedia, and actually produced my first 3 performance art projects in the mid-'80s with Richard Horowitz. As you know, we were performed at the Carnegie Recital Hall in New Composers Forum, and it just got very much integrated in the avant-garde in downtown New York music and art scene, and it was really fertile. And if I were going to get stuck as a refugee anywhere, it wasn't a bad place. New York City.
Right. Hey, the levels are just a little bit low, so if you could,
so I should speak louder.
Yeah, punch your 2 beautiful vocal cords a little bit so that we can all hear your story.
Okay. All right. Sure.
So, looking back on this, everything that was taking place at these festivals, the Niaz Festival, Persepolis, all that stuff in Iran, it seems like all the elements that were around you, ultimately you were able to fuse those as influences in your singing, and it's almost like it's ground zero for all that to take place, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that that incredible power of the folk and ancient music, the ritualistic aspect of it, combined with the work of some of the most progressive thinking artists of that time, really have, to this day, is really the most influential aspect of my work, because I've never really done anything in between. My work has always to do with ancient rituals and vibrational aspect of those rituals, and then something that's utterly futuristic. And for some reason, I can't live the present without the presence of these 2 elements, because I think, especially if your art form is music, I mean, I think it depends on your art form. Maybe if I were a visual artist, I wouldn't be gravitating towards calligraphy or, but in music, the medium of music, the ancient music, it's so mysterious and so powerful and so intricate and sophisticated, and carries so much in it, so much of the genes of a culture, of the sensuality of the culture, of the trance and ritualistic aspect of a culture, of a meditational aspect of a culture. It carries so much that you can't even intellectually or rationally construct and talk about. But when you surrender to like a Moroccan, Ganawa ceremony, Lila, and people go to trance, or when you really listen to Iranian classical music or Indian classical music, it's an amazing place it's a humbling place of surrendering. You just know that you need to just be all ears and experience the music from a very surrendered space in you, because there's and also the power of progressive arts. I mean, I think that a lot of my work with the traditionalists, I've always had a little bit of an issue, because I never defend tradition in the sense of that I'm a traditionalist and my culture or your culture and this culture and that culture, geographic reality of cultures and all of that stuff. It's just never been something that I don't feel like I need to be exotic projection of other people's lack of education on what vibrational music is or traditions are. And I think that some of the movement in the last 10, 15 years that fortunately, a lot of old music has entered international sonic sensibility. Maybe it's been drum and bass, or like maybe it hasn't been like Parnas Parnas, but still it's you hear more about people gravitating towards that music and wanting to hear the real thing, etc., etc. But there are a lot of heavy-handed people in between that define tradition as having a bindi and act as if you're coming from a tradition as opposed to be from a tradition. And there's a heavy-handed also attitude with intellectual and progressive artists from these places, especially in the music scene, which is really, unfortunately, a dead industry at this point.
It really is. It's a corpse right
now. Because,
you
look at the film and literature and visual arts, industries. The integration of ethnicity and stories from all over the world into these mediums has been astounding.
Yep.
And then come to me the industry of music. They call it world music, which is very colonialistic, and it's so small and non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to expect a rock star inviting you to some stage for you to get some attention coming from some place called, the third world or the old world or something. And there's something so, excuse I don't want to use that word, something so really annoying about, this colonialistic, nouveau colonialistic aspect of all this. It's just annoying. So not wanting to be part of it, it also gives a signal that, oh, you're arrogant, or, but what, am I a tourist, looking for attention, or am I, and then what's your concept of authenticity? What is authentic?
Right, exactly. It really opens up that question.
Authenticity. It is what it is. It's what is authenticity? How do you define authenticity? Is this a facade? Is it an act? Or is it a reality for which sometimes we pay a very big price? Because authenticity, for us, coming from the modern Iran, with enough, intellectual awareness of our surroundings when we were young, authenticity was a very complex thing because we had teachers who would push us into adoration of Iranian culture, and this is who you are, and you can't become Western, and why, try this amazing culture, thousands of years old. And then we had teachers saying, blasting Karl Orff, in 1974, saying, who you are is who you are. When you go to Europe, you learn what you're not because you need to open up. So this schizophrenic idea of what your identity is and your, is a very interesting place. And why reduce it to some projection of a nouveau colonialistic idea of your identity just because you may get a gig?
Right.
It's ridiculous. People have paid enormous prices throughout history to try to help creating bridges that are sensitive, that carry tradition into the time we're living in, with love and with respect to both traditions, but with also one important thing in mind. Are you trying to teach, to educate, or are you trying to entertain? And
that's a big
maybe
question.
Sometimes you can combine that, but yeah. Please, you were saying.
I was thinking about your question, your notice about the dearth of, international artists or artists from other countries that are integrating into music, or it's not happening in music in the way that it's happening with film and literature and things like that. And the only thing I have to say, Sussan, is Justin Bieber's from Canada, so I'm going to disagree with you.
Yes, well, the English language monopoly, is also giving again one more platform to English-speaking people to be able to create, monopolize the industries. So I'm happy that Canada is getting a really good a lot of attention these days. So many great Canadian artists. It's a great. Canada should be a little bit of an example for the U.S. because they have some things in their society is slightly more socialistic without them being self-conscious about it. So it's okay for Justin Bieber to have shined.
Well, let's give people a taste of your music so they can get an understanding. Because for me, you were like this really fascinating axis point between the past and the future and the East and the West. I think it all really kind of between acoustic music and electronic music. I think it all kind of comes together through you. And channeling is really an overused term. But if there was a person who would be worthy of that description, not necessarily in the traditional sense of the word channeling, but something much more complex. So what I want to do is I want to play a few tracks here and give people an idea as to just how wide and varied your musical palette is. The first track I'm going to play is Navai Savage Bird. Can you give a little bit of history and background on this piece? And then we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more about it, then I'm going to play Trouble Man. So let's get into this Navai Savage Bird.
Sure. This was, 10 years ago, I think even more, 12, 13 years ago, I had this idea of reviving some of this beautiful Iranian folk traditional tunes that were part of the repertoire of Iran, classical repertoire, but they're in the form of song, they're not improvisational. To bring that into the attention of international community because they are really wonderful, and with all my collaborations with people from, let's say, Doug Wimbish to, Richard Horowitz, to classical musicians from Iran, to Bobby McFerrin, to Ornette Coleman. So I thought there was a place for these materials to be come to a place of, a synthesis of all these different musical forms. And so I started experimenting with the material, and then it became an album called Madman of God, which I think is my most well-known album that came out in Europe on a wonderful recording label, Cramped Music, Kamet Discs. And so many people played on it, and Bill Laswell, who's a dear friend, and I used to see him a lot when I lived in New York. I thought maybe he could do a remix for us, and he did a remix of that album. And I think that the Navai that you have is probably a remix by Bill, because there's Navai on the main album, and then there's Navai on the remix album. And it's a wonderful old song, and it's very dark, and I think it's about. I have to remember the lyrics, but I think it's about the wanting to hear a little voice from the beloved or who's leaving, something like that. I have to remember the lyrics. But so I think that you're playing the remix of this by Bill Laswell and Karsh Kale. They did this remix for me together.
Yeah. This is the remix by Bill Laswell. It's a Navai Savage Bird, and when we come back, we'll talk with Sussan some more, and we'll get into Trouble Man, very interesting cover. But here it is, Navai Savage Bird, the Laswell remix.
I love that.
remix
That's
by
one of
Bill
my
Laswell.
favorite. Yeah,
What's that?
that's one of my favorite remixes on that album. Something about um, the the song, the piece kind of takes off because the atmosphere is so abstract and futuristic, and this lament is happens more in a solitary space, and it becomes even more dramatic and more dark and more soulful. So I find that remix very very cool. Bill did a beautiful job, and Kirsch Calais is also they actually did this together.
Mm-hmm. Kirsch is amazing. I was in the chat.
Hello?
Somebody said within 2 lines, I feel exultation. No, I feel sorrow. So she was feeling both of these emotions simultaneously. So I think your description of that is probably apropos because on the other end of the experience, somebody was having a similar experience.
Well, it's really, I think that's the power of some of this, the old music. This is exactly what it does to me. It really, that is my infatuation with some of these ancient melodies and ancient traditions. It's not intellectual. It's because it puts me exactly in this very specific place where I can't describe it. It's completely, it's exactly what you just said. And that's a very powerful place to be. It doesn't happen in day-to-day life. You're in that space.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you cry and you just say, wow, I haven't done this in a long time. What a really interesting feeling, And it doesn't happen very often that we're in that space.
Yeah.
That you could cry and then you could also just, oh, my God, this is the best thing, And we need it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Hey, let's get into Trouble Man now. The first time I heard this was at your place in Santa Monica, and I was really blown away. What's the backstory on this track?
Well, among my collaborations with amazing friends, I always have been completely, in love with Black American music, gospel, soul, Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye. And the work that I did on one of my albums in London with, we started an album with Adrian Sherwood, Keith LeBlanc, the whole Tackhead and Sugar Hill gang.
Yep.
And I met Doug Wimbish through Adrian and Will Calhoun as well, who's been playing with me for 20 years now. So there's always been this tendency that I wanted to do a Islamic R&B album or a Eastern influence gospel album or something like in that vein of things. And so while I was really working on this idea, I met a wonderful young producer in New York, Scott Jacoby, and I heard his music, and he's just amazing. He was young at that point, but the material that he produced, I felt like I was listening to 1970s music. I just couldn't believe this young, intelligent Jewish boy from New York is producing. But of course, we all know Jewish people had a long history with, Black American music. So anyway, I told him, would you like to do a collaboration? And he said he had the same manager as I did and Bill Laswell had. So we decided to start this project, and if it went anywhere, we could just do a whole album together. So we did 3 tracks, and one of them was this song. And we literally experimented, we did like 4 or 5 sessions, and we came up with some ideas, and we cut it, and it came out to be something that we both really loved. And I have to say, it really shakes people when they hear it, but it never found its way into a bigger listening spectrum, but it's out on I have my own label, Venus Rising Records, and so a lot of my experiments that I really like and my fans like end up on my label Venus Rising, which is on my website. And it's been great because, you could put so much interesting stuff in your own catalog that only people who have your kind of sensibility can hear it, and then also it comes out as an album, and it remains. So people discover it many years after, but it's out in the world. So that's the story of this song, and I really I love Marvin Gaye and Sam Cooke, and I just love it's great that I have one track that also shows my my love affair with that era of music, because that's actually when I really listened to the music, American music, pop music, was when I was in Tehran. Because as young kids, you know, it was kind of cool to listen to the American radio station in Tehran, and so you had like, you know, Joni Mitchell and Carole King, and Pink Floyd was the biggest thing ever, you know. So, but when I actually left Iran in Brussels, because I was part of this major ballet company, I literally didn't listen to pop music anymore. It was all this classical music. And then, you know, of course, Nina Hagen showed up, and then David Bowie was hot, but they were both performers, stage people. So, you know, we gravitated towards their work. But so that's the story of this one.
All right, let's play it. This is Sussan's version of Marvin Gaye's classic soul track from the soundtrack to the movie Trouble Man.
Trouble Man, don't get in my way.
Okay, we seem to have a little.
Cool. I see.
Sussan.
Yes, hi.
Hello. We lost the
Hi,
audio.
hi. Can you hear me?
Can
Hello?
you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. For some reason, we lost the audio right at the peak of that track, so that's kind of a bummer. That was awesome. And again, tons of great feedback in the chat room.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Digging your music. You've got some live dates coming up. Where are you playing in the near future?
Well, I think the San Francisco is the first one. It's on October 27th. It's a Sunday at Yoshi's. It's a jazz club. I've never been there, but it seems like it's an established jazz club in San Francisco. And then I have a benefit concert in Los Angeles. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, and then there's a concert in Los Angeles, but it's a benefit concert. It's at Zipper Hall. And then I may have a couple of shows in Paris, and then my large multimedia piece is going to preview at Freud Hall in UCLA on January 19th. And that's a really amazing project that I think is the biggest project of my recent years. So it's taking a lot of energy, but I'm also very excited about it.
Yeah. Who are you playing with up at Yoshi's? I think I saw the lineup briefly. Who's part of your ensemble?
With some great friends, Mitch Foreman on piano. Mitch is one of the most amazing pianists, Mahavishnu Orchestra, etc. And I don't have to say more. He is. We've been playing together for the last 2-3 years. He was introduced to me by John Beasley, who's another astounding pianist and arranger. John couldn't do a gig with me, and then he introduced me to Mitch. So between Mitch and John, and have a couple of the best pianists in California playing with me. So Mitch is going to be playing. And Greg Ellis, you probably know him. Greg is an amazing percussionist who has had many different bands. I think his last collaboration was with Mickey Hart. He just played here at the House of Blues. He has a studio filled with percussive instruments from all over the world, and he plays them all amazingly well. So he's going to be on percussion and kit. And we have a bass player, John. He just was recommended to me because my bass player couldn't play with me, so you have to excuse me. I'm trying to remember the last name, but he's supposed to be an amazing player, John Leftwich. Yes, that's what it is. And he's going to be on bass. And I'm hoping that I will have maybe an Iranian Iranian guest, maybe in San Francisco.
Oh, cool. Very cool. I almost had an aneurysm climbing up to Greg's studio one time.
Uh-huh.
That thing is like 10,000 steps or something like that. It was a nosebleed climb. What was it like working on Argo? How intensely involved were you on the production of that, the soundtrack of that film?
Well, I got a phone call from Alexander Desplat, who is the composer and great composer. Him and I were really interested in collaborating together just as composers prior to his huge success in Hollywood. And it just took some time, and then when he was assigned to do the score for this film, he called me from Paris and he said, here's an occasion that we can work together, but it's a kind of tricky subject. I'd like you to know about the subject. And I said, well, can you send me the script? And although at that point was sort of supposed to be a secret, they did send me the script respectfully. And in the script, I didn't have any problem with portrayal of that revolution that actually put myself and many of the people that I know and a country on hold in a negative way. I didn't have any problem with the portrayal of that specific situation in a negative way because it was a negative situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I said yes, and Alexander and I met again in LA, and I was in the studio with him for a week with everyone else, with Ben Affleck, and George Clooney would come and visit, and we were pretty involved in this together because, as always, it wasn't clear if it needs to have a classical score or slightly less classical or more contemporary sound design, etc. So it was sonically, in terms of the score, we were working together, and that's how we worked. And the movie came out, and there were a lot of controversy in terms of its accuracy, especially regarding the Canadian consulate and whether it was a Canadian consulate, which helped a lot, or the CIA did the whole thing, and then the portrayal of Iranians in the airport, which was supposed to be, apparently it was actually quite easy for them to leave, and all of that came out after the film was released, which was, whoa, it's like, wow, there's the script and then there's everything else.
Right.
But, and I was extremely surprised that the movie had as much success as it did, and but in my relationship with all these people in the studio, they could not have been more respectful and, really, really, really respectful to me. And so it's a little bit of a, now I told you everything. I enjoyed working with everyone, getting to know everyone, and a few days in a row, and listen to everybody's stories, and definitely loved working with Alexander Desplat, and I hope we work together again. He's a fantastic composer and now a very good friend. So, and it really was a very big exposure for my vocal work, just because, especially the kinds of stuff that I did on that score, is quite experimental. It's not like the classic chanting, on the landscape of, mythical whatever it is that you see in Hollywood. It actually is a lot of experimental vocal techniques. So in that way, it was quite interesting because finally, something quite experimental comes out on a score that's really a big, big score, a big film.
Yep.
So in that way, it was quite interesting, and I had so much attention given to the score. Although we, thought the score was really mixed very low, but it worked for the film. So you have to be, you always have to be in film as composers. We're used to the idea of if it works, all the elements are well chosen.
Right.
Sometimes you want the score to be the message, and sometimes it just cannot be. Depends on the director. So.
Yeah. Well, it was very successful.
Yeah, it was very successful. It's
tremendous to the movie. So before we go here and say goodbye for the not so distant future, hopefully next time, I'm going to play "City of Leaves" as kind of an outro to our interview. When did "City of Leaves" come out?
City of Leaves is I wanted to write a song in Farsi and using the more like contemporary Iranian poetry as my guide. And there's a wonderful Iranian poet called Sohrab Sepehri, who was a Buddhist, and he had a very interesting relationship between Buddhism and Sufism. But his work was very contemporary, both as a visual artist and poet. And I love his poetry because it's really open and it's really it has the Buddhist thing ingrained in it. So the piece I wrote, City of Leaves, is and also it's based on my love affair with nature and Iranian, nature worshipping, tradition. So this song, City of Leaves, is about both a Buddhist, Sufi journey through the nature and the fact that we need so much less than we think in this lifetime than just simplicity of things in life and be surrounded by nature. So, and it's a collaboration with the longtime partner and, to my opinion, one of the greatest composers, American composers, really, Richard Horowitz. And so we did this project, an album called City of Leaves, all together, and this specific piece we wrote together. And also the violin, there's a solo violin in it that is by Ginger Shankar.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so here we go. This is City of Leaves, and you can find all the music you heard here today and more at Sussan's website, sussandeyhim.com. And you're going to be playing once again at Yoshi's on the 22nd, right, in San Francisco?
27th.
27th
yeah,
in
Sunday.
San Francisco. And then you have another date coming up in L.A. after that. You can find out all that information and more on Sussan's website. So let's get into City of Leaves, and let's say goodbye to our friend, Sussan Deyhim. Sussan's been great catching up.
Thank you so much. Great pleasure.
And tell Uncle Richard I said hi.
I will, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm dressed with the leaves, set by the flowers, rich with the golden sun, lit by the moon, caressed by the wind, walking by the clouds. I'm living in the city of love. الشهر بيشحن
That was the amazing Sussan Deyhim, City of Leaves, from her LP, record, download, whatever we... SussanDeyhim.com. And of course, we'll be playing at Yoshi's in San Francisco on the 27th. And if you've never been to Yoshi's, I would go. It's in the Fillmore District. The Fillmore District used to be a very interesting place. It was the site of Black culture. It was the Harlem of San Francisco. And we're talking Harlem in its heyday, its Renaissance, the Harlem Renaissance. This is when all the great jazz musicians came out of Harlem and began to go play down on the Lower East Side. But it's there in the Fillmore District. It's a great club, fantastic sightlines, great acoustics. They do serve phenomenal sushi. However, I'm sure they have some very nice vegetarian sushi with non-genetically modified organism vegetables inside those nicely wrapped pieces of seaweed from Japan. Ooh, forgot, they're from Japan. Anyway, let's get into our next guest. This is kind of a treat for me because I've been playing this piece of, it's not even really spoken word. It's really from a statement that Philip K. Dick gave, I believe it was in 1976, at a science fiction convention / forum. Metz, France. not far from where I was actually born, in Verdun. Lived in Metz the first few months of my life. And so I actually took that piece of spoken word, or his presentation statement, and I put some music around it, and I use it as my opening for the show. And it's about, I think it's about Philip K. Dick's vision of the pink triangle. And we're going to talk about that more with his widow, Tessa B. Dick, who's a fascinating woman in her own right. She's an English major. She's a heck of a writer. She has her own website. She has her own radio show. And she's, I think, so let's find out more about Tessa and more about her life with the famous and infamous Philip K. Dick. Let's see if this is her on hold here.
Hello.
Is this Tessa?
Sure
Hi.
is.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine, but you're breaking up.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a really hard time with audio and all kinds of other stuff today.
Yeah, I think the NSA doesn't like us.
Well, I just posted a pretty trippy photo over on Facebook. And if you haven't been to my Facebook page,
Silence again.
a series of photos for a video that I'm doing. Yeah. Let me see if I can try this. Hold on. Let me see if I can
Series
do this.
of
Reset
photos?
this thing.
For a video.
Did you? Yes.
Are you on
photos? Yeah, can you?
Are you on Vonage by any chance?
No. I'm on Skype. Yeah,
Oh.
it's just like my mic is cutting out. I've been challenged audio from an audio perspective because when Sussan was on, she was cutting out. Now apparently I'm cutting out.
Well, you were always cutting out here and there. She was just not loud enough. Okay,
Yeah.
I got your Facebook page. You got a whole bunch of photos. Okay. Well, anyway, I want, for the record, the photo of Phil that you posted here on Blog Talk, that woman is not me. That's Wanda Kendall.
Oh. I apologize.
She was a
It
belly
came up
dancer.
as you. I apologize.
She was a belly dancer at a science fiction convention.
Well, that's
and it is a great photo.
It
Sorry
is a
for
great
stepping.
photo. I apologize for that, Tessa. So we'll change that. I'll pull that down and I'll put
go ahead and leave it. It's very Phil Dickian.
So let's talk about Mr. Dick. How?
Oh crud! You're silent again. That's why I keep stepping on you because you're cutting out, so I don't hear you.
That's okay. The question is how did you meet Philip Dick? How did you meet him?
Well, we just happened to both get invited to a beach party around the 4th of July by a mutual friend. And I suspect there might have been more to it than that. Phil certainly did. I mean, he was paranoid, but he was probably right. And he had been through some really shattering experiences before I met him. I was planning to either go to college out of state or join the Navy, probably join the Navy when I met him. And we just seemed to have a lot in common.
Now, how old were you when you met him?
I was 18, and he was 43. I think he was actually 42. He hadn't had his birthday yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it matters much, but the difference in our ages didn't mean a thing.
Right.
Silence.
Well,
anyway.
This has been very challenging
This has been sorry. This has been very challenging on the audio front today. Like I said, I think my picture might have raised a few eyebrows. So, when you first met him, did you know who Philip Dick was, or did you just see this kind of wild and crazy visionary, slightly on the paranoid tip? What was your relationship like with him?
No, I did not know who he was, and what I saw was something like a little hurt puppy dog that you might come across on the side of the road. He was very sad and lonely and really hurt. But as I got to know him, of course, we had long discussions, both the two of us and with friends, about all sorts of topics that really interested me, from the occult side of the Nazis to what was going on with the CIA and the Mafia at the time, which was the early 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my cigarette went out. I had to light it. It's the only drug I use.
Everything seems to be... Did you meet Phil in Marin County?
Orange County. He was living in Fullerton.
Mm-hmm.
And I was living in Brea, which they're not far apart, but for an 18-year-old with no car and no driver's license, it was a considerable distance.
Yeah.
Anyway, we felt that we'd been thrown together for some purpose other than our own, and yet we stayed together for quite a while.
Right.
Yeah. So Phil's problem was that he was not capable of fidelity.
That can be, I think that can be part of the occupational hazards of being a writer at times.
I guess. He was bored, and I was bored, and we didn't really communicate well with each other. So when he moved out, I really didn't try to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read all these stories about how I left him and he committed suicide and all this. It's a bunch of baloney.
Yeah. Where was he in his creative arc at that time in your marriage?
Creative arc? Well, he was beginning to write.
Where was he in terms of? Yeah, his
he
books.
was beginning to write in the genre he always wanted to write in, which was more like a suspense, mystery, thriller. He wanted to be Tom Clancy, not Arthur C. Clarke. Mm-hmm. So his novel A Scanner Darkly, and the one before that, Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, focused on things like police procedure,
mm-hmm.
and not necessarily a murder mystery, but still a mystery and a bit of a thriller. He really hoped to write something
mm-hmm.
like Sam Spade novel before he died, but he never wrote one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
He was beginning to put his waking life into his novel, whereas before he'd been writing his dreams and nightmares into them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it led naturally to Valis and the Transmigration of Timothy Archer and those novels which are collectively known as the Valis novels.
Mm-hmm.
He felt that, like his protagonist in A Scanner Darkly, he had been split into at least two people, and that's true. I witnessed many many incidents where he honestly said he did not do something that I knew he had done, but he believed he hadn't, because he was a split personality. He'd been subjected to some serious mind control. So that's what I'm researching now, by the way, mind control.
Yeah. Where do you think that happened for him?
Well, the most obvious was when he was in Vancouver, the one in Canada, British Columbia.
Right.
There's several Vancouvers. Yep. He was put into the back of a limousine by two men in black suits, and they drove him around the city for hours, talking to him and questioning him, and he couldn't remember a thing that they said or a thing that he said. But he woke up on the floor of his apartment having swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills, and he nearly died.
Wow.
And he kept trying to recover those memories, and he considered hypnosis, but he was afraid of being hypnotized. You got to trust the hypnotist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he had strange experiences all his life, but that one was the most outrageous.
So he really is Bob Arctor then, from A Scanner Darkly. That is him.
Well, yeah, Bob and Fred.
Bob and Fred, right.
And he's also, the famous actor in Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, who wakes up one day and finds that nobody ever heard of him.
Right.
And in Valis, he's both Horse Lover Fats and Philip K. Dick.
Interesting.
He's both people. Yeah.
What was his astrological sign? Was he a Sag?
He was a Sagittarius, born December 16th, but he was 6 weeks premature, so he should have been, Aquarius or Pisces? I guess Aquarius.
I think he should have been a Capricorn. Maybe Aquarius. You're right. He should have been Aquarius. Yeah. The 6 weeks.
Yeah. And his twin sister died around the time that they should have been born. His mother has been blamed for that, but this was the Depression in Chicago in the winter. The babies were born at home because she had no money, and she got them to a hospital as soon as she possibly could. But both of those babies were around 2 pounds. Neither one of them should have survived.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, his mother was very English, cold and not the kind to hug and cuddle, and Phil had a great need for physical closeness, and she just didn't offer it.
Yeah,
she wasn't mean, she was just cold.
Yeah, that's an outgrowth of the Depression era parents, which I've talked about on the show before, and how it devastated the chain of emotionality and care through the legacy of the various generations that come out of that. It's also an interesting piece around the death of his twin sister, because esoterically there's this
you broke up
of
again.
That twin goes to the left. Okay, I have to keep repeating myself.
Esoterically, there is what?
This notion that the power of the twin that dies goes to the other twin
at that moment in time. Elvis Presley had a twin sister that died as well. Did Philip ever feel like she was a part of his experience?
She was all over his life and his writing. He was always looking for her, thinking that she might be reincarnated. And there were, I forgot the word, the twins that are parasitic in some of his works. I can't think of the word right now, but where you're born with your lost twin's body parts actually inside you.
Oh yeah, I don't know the word either, but that's actually documented where that's happened.
Yeah. But when he was a small child, he used to play with his imaginary twin sister.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of like Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. He wanted to be a cowboy. Boy, our childhood dreams rarely come true.
That was the time to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
This is true. Yeah. What did you want to be when you grew up, Tessa?
Well, at one point I wanted to be an entertainer, kind of like vaudeville, sing, dance, tell jokes. But then I decided I'd rather be a veterinarian. And I ended up teaching English. Go figure.
And where did that take place?
The teaching English, Chapman College, before they became a hoity-toity university. They have satellite campuses all over the place, so I taught on a number of military bases. And boy, those people in my classes were sharp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Smart, hardworking, reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
anyway, yeah.
So speaking of entertainment and wanting to be an entertainer, what do you think of the portrayal of Philip's works in cinema? Which one do you like the best?
Well, I guess the most faithful to his body of work is Minority Report.
Mm-hmm.
Now, A Scanner Darkly was literally true to the novel, but they didn't catch the spirit of it. They thought the point was that drugs are bad, and the real point is that the war on drugs is bad. And that, of course, our own government is selling the drugs to the people that they arrest and throw into prison.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a long story.
Yeah,
Phil, by the way, has been branded as a drug addict. That really is not true. And he wasn't a speed freak either. His doctor prescribed methamphetamine for weight loss and depression.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did at the time. That
right.
was standard in the 1960s. He wasn't buying it off the street. And he had LSD exactly 2 times, and it was the pharmaceutical that they were using at UCLA. So, and in fact, in the 10 years that I knew him, the only drug I ever saw him use was he smoked a joint once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whoopee.
Yeah. So that's actually a real misnomer and kind of blatant urban myth on Philip's use of drugs. So thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think he was a lot like me. I don't need drugs to have an experience of altered consciousness. I can just close my eyes and go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well.
Well, so who needs a drug? Drugs are poison. That's how they alter your consciousness. They're toxic.
Yep. Yeah. Now, I may cut out while I say this, but I look back on my misspent youth, and, you know, I got something out of those experiences, but if I had to do them all over again, I think I would have not done them.
Well, I did eat a blue mushroom once before I found out it was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they grow in cow pastures all over Oregon and Northern California, but they're illegal. It was interesting, but I'd never do it again. Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You know. So Philip was married multiple times. I was curious as to who deals with the estate or the royalties or anything that comes from the novels or the films. How was that determined?
Well, I'm not really a part of that. It's split 3 ways among his children. And there really isn't much money right now anyway. They've milked it dry. And a lot of things are out of copyright as well. And I wonder about that because they shouldn't be. I think some lawyer must have made a mistake, but since I'm not a part of it, there's nothing I can do. And his children just want to go on with their lives. You know, life goes on. But his work is everywhere. Quite a bit of it is available online for free.
Mm-hmm.
I have a copy of the exegesis, but I haven't looked at it because I was there while he wrote it, and I kind of got tired of it. But I'm going to have to crack that book open and look at it. He was, yeah?
No.
You're gone again. Well, his exegesis was an attempt to explain his experience of pink beam, right. They call it. I call it fire bright.
Yeah.
But
right.
He felt that whatever this was, it rescued him from dark, sinister forces that were out to either kill him or neutralize him in some way. And considering what happened in Vancouver, that isn't much of a stretch. But he had over 10,000 pages of manuscript, and he never intended it to go out in that form. It's highly repetitive, and it needed editing. And even this volume, this huge exegesis that's available now, is only a small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it's hard to get back into the mindset of when it was happening. It was just too frightening. And then eventually, I was just plain tired of it. You know, I had a 2-year-old baby, so I didn't care what God said to him today. The
right.
baby needs changing and feeding and
right.
playing and hugging, and I was not cut out to be a mother. Did the best I could, and my son thinks I'm wonderful, but I'd never do it again. I lacked patience.
But it's challenging for some people, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think having a child...
It's not a gig for everybody.
Having a child reminds you of your own childhood, and my childhood was anything but happy.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I can say is that I had it much better than my brothers, and they did try to shield me. But our mother was a demon-possessed alcoholic. She drank herself to death at age 58.
Wow.
And my oldest brother drank himself to death at 50, so I'm real careful around substances like alcohol. I don't crave alcohol, but if I have a couple drinks, I'll have 6, and then I'll threaten to beat up total strangers. And there's no way I could actually do it.
How close do you think we are with the world that we're living in to the type of world that Philip saw, especially around the pink light or the pink ray, when he actually began to visualize this kind of very dark and kind of fascistic control society? How close are we?
We're in it.
Yeah.
We've been in it at least since World War II. The technology is getting better. The mind control techniques are getting better. But we've been in it, some of us, all our lives. For one thing, there's the television. I gave that up 3 years ago. It's hypnotic. And whether there's subliminal messages or not, just the fact that you sit down and can't tear yourself away, yell at your kids to shut up because something's on TV, that's bad in itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're here now, and I believe we are here now, by the way, and the type of technology that you're talking about is some of the things that Philip obviously was also kind of way ahead of the game on. I don't know if you noticed this, but in Minority Report.
Lost you again. Pre-crime, they have some psychic twins predicting that you will commit a crime, so they go and arrest you before you commit it. Still silent. Well, in New York, they're using Twitter to predict where crimes will occur so they can send police officers there before it happens.
Interesting. They have a TV show out now called Person of Interest.
Oh boy.
It's been out for about 3 years. It's all about mind crime. It's exactly what it's about.
Wow. Well, you know, the NSA is watching everything from email to phone calls. They might even be watching what you say to your friends and neighbors without you knowing it. Google drives around and takes pictures of the streets. Nobody has privacy anymore. I did put a piece of tape over the camera on my computer, but I'm sure they can hear me cussing my head off when the computer just won't do what I tell it.
Or when my audio keeps cutting out on my show. So, I completely agree with that. What about your own work, Tessa? I mean, obviously, you have your own thoughts, your own ideas. You've got a blog. You have a radio show.
You was cut out after radio show. Well, the book that probably will interest your audience the most is titled Philip K. Dick, Remembering Firebright. It is a memoir about his pink light experience. And I have a sort of companion volume called Tessa B. Dick, My Life on the Edge of Reality, which covers my own experience with mind control and strange government-sponsored experiments. And the last chapter of that is actually a fictionalized story of a series of dreams that I had about being rounded up into FEMA camps. Oh boy, those dreams seem so real, I wonder sometimes whether they were a prediction of the future. And sometimes I wonder whether it really did happen and we just don't remember. If mind control has advanced as far as I think it has, everything around us might be unreal, and all our efforts to pull open the veil and see reality are futile. But we have to keep trying.
Right.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I apologize for this, Tessa.
It happens to me on my show, too.
Hasn't
Sometimes
happened.
I lose.
It hasn't happened in a while.
Sometimes I lose. Yeah, sometimes I lose the first half hour because Blog Talk just cancels my show, and it has to be rescheduled. Huh. I don't know whether someone's hacking in or it's just a glitch, but it happens.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Well, today it's worse than it's ever been. Yeah, I'm here.
Well,
hey, listen. So why don't we do this? Let's have you back on again, because I'd like to talk to you more. But this is really very challenging today.
Okay.
Because I'm only hearing every like 10 words, and then you go away. So it's hard.
Well, let's see if the guys in the chat room can hear. Yeah, they say they're hearing me. Okay, they just don't hear you. I can tell when you're gone because the phone has a certain tone when you are on, and then it's totally silent when you're cut out. Like now.
I got dropped, period.
Gosh. That's horrible.
No, literally, I just got dropped right out of my own show.
Wow. Well, they say that in the chat room, they say they hear me, but you cut out.
Yeah. Well, let's try this. My calling back in might have solved everything. I wonder if Philip is hacking this experience. What do you think?
I don't know. I like to think that he's moved on to a better world and doesn't have to worry about what's happening here. Wow. Anyway, I did have a vision in which he was in another realm where he could walk in the garden and have conversations with his favorite philosophers like Francis Bacon and Erasmus. Sorry, the GMO candy just made me burp.
Okay.
I can't help it. I'm hooked on this stuff.
That's all right. We all have our vices. And some of them can be worse than GMO candy. What's your favorite GMO candy?
Kit Kat. It's a crunchy wafer covered in chocolate. I think I kind of like the Cadbury bars too, but some evil corporation bought them out. I think you're gone again. So I'll just keep on talking till I hear you. GMO is a real problem, and there you are, sort of.
I'm back, but listen, I've had to call back into my show 3 times. So
wow.
I'm going to say goodbye because this is getting a little more challenging than I'd like currently to be dealing with. So let's have you back on, and try to do another segment with you because I really want to catch up with you in real time about what you think is going on in the world.
Oh, well, we might as well finish the 15 minutes since they can't hear you. Wow. Maybe you could play a clip again of Phil. Oop, I think you're dead again. But I will definitely come on another time. Let's see. Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to say goodbye, Tessa.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's hook up down the line. I can't deal with this glitch.
Okay.
All right. Thanks
Shall
for
I hang up?
We'll have you back on soon. I promise. Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend. I apologize for all these snafus. I'll see you on Monday with the Monday mashup. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.